Hello and welcome to the DM's Travel Book Club, a guide to the inner planes, where in each episode we explore one of the inner planes of existence as outlined in the great wheel cosmology in the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. Got to do the hand gestures.
Yeah.
Woo.
I was just doing weird hand gestures. I'll see if I can put you off.
I deliberately put my script over you so I don't
Oh,
see
so you couldn't see me doing... I was doing this the whole time.
You were doing big interpretive dance, but then I have to move my script over me and then I could just talk to you directly. Otherwise, I just look at myself for the whole Zoom call.
Yes,
and
that's what I do the whole Zoom call as well.
You can tell when I'm like looking at myself and then I go back to you because I deliberately change. I have to be like, no, look at Hamilton. Right, so penultimate episode.
Yeah.
Series. We've done elemental planes, we've done parallel elemental planes, we've done the positive quasi-elemental planes, and now we're on to our final four.
Yes, we are. The negative energy quasi-elemental planes. And this week we have ash and dust.
Ooh.
I know. They already sound much more interesting, these negative energy ones. You've got ash, dust, salt, and vacuum, which sounds very cool. Yeah.
I think because we came from lightning and lightning and mineral and radiance and steam, and we had some sort of there was some stuff in there that was really good. Certainly, steam was interesting and radiance was interesting. And now, this is the thing for me. I would say, ash and dust. When I think of them as a pairing, I'm like, they must be quite similar in a sense. It's just a dark place with ash being just cinders, so maybe a little bit hot, and then dust is just those particles. So again, all I can see is there's just not much there.
I just see them as two variations on a Dark Souls game.
Pretty much, yeah. Go. It's a transition scene from one to another.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but surprisingly, both of them actually do have quite different, if not actually slightly more differences than we see between mineral and earth than we do probably between ash and dust, which is quite interesting. But yes, we should probably start with ash, shouldn't we? So, what is ash?
What is ash? It's
not the plane, that is, not
what is ash? The Pokemon trainer.
What is ketchum?
What is ketchum? Yeah, it's a Jeopardy question now. So ash is a quasi-elemental plane that's located at the sort of border between fire and the negative energy plane. So it's a region that is basically, it's incredibly cold, weirdly.
I love that. Yeah.
It's again, it's the same with that sort of the steam place as well, where you and I were talking about it last time, where we're like, oh, it's gonna be super warm, like a spa, like a hot springs, that kind of yes, a steam room essentially. Whereas here, this idea that it is a place of incredible cold that is born in the sort of crucible of elemental fire. It's an immense block of grey-white flakes pressed together like a big old mess of dry powder. And then sometimes in some places it's like a haze of floating particles, like clouds that rain down around like rumbling volcanoes. This is the key thing here is that elemental ash just draws the heat right out of everything.
That's what I like about it. It's sort of in negative. It's just because the embers themselves are potentially heated and embery, burning away, but it's through the heat of everything else around it that makes it able to still fire as, taking on that negative energy quality. I think it's really a good spin on it, and I really appreciate it. I think it made it really cool and gives it particularly some really cool effects, but we'll come on to those. But yeah, the as you were talking about the descriptions of the places, and some of the best things in all of these have been these sort of traveling in each direction. Elemental fire, the chilling cold place gradually gives way to an all-consuming flames. At the junction of these two planes, a body runs right into the sea of frozen flames, a place that produces no heat but still burns away flesh as quickly as hot coals, which is kind of interesting, that sort of transition from losing all your heat to then burning while still being freezing. And then
you could have a really cool descriptions of NPCs or monsters that chasing you that suddenly then just go into nothing, essentially. Because this is the thing, I think this place, the Plane of Ash, is one of the places that I would definitely want to take players too, because it's, for me, it is so different to what I would expect. It's not just like, oh, it's falling cinders, oh, there must be a volcano in the back. Like, it is dangerous here, and so not knowing how really to combat it, unless, you know, oh, we're going to the elemental plane of fire, so we'll have heat protective stuff, sure, but that idea that you're just constantly cold, basically you're me and go, I need another jacket and a scarf and this and that. So that's how that's the funny side of it, I guess. But yeah, there's just something about it where I think as a player, if you're presented with this sort of setting, you're like, we can't stay here.
Well,
we have to keep pushing the story forward. You know, that's what
you said about the embers and the cinder wells. The former's a swirling cloud of hot, stinging ashes that have not yet given up the heat, and frigid patches of volcanic ash and rivers of glowing magma mark the latter. Both places are where Arctic cold endlessly battles blistering heat. So you just have to be insulated, don't you? You just have to be heavily insulated, both from heat and from cold. That's kind of it. Just walking around in an Iron Man suit or something like that. I don't know.
You're like you're just a thermos flask, but then some ice cubes put next to you. I don't know. It's
you're a thermos flask. That's it. No, exactly that. You've got it. You can keep hot things hot and cold things cold. So what have you got in there? I've got coffee and ice cream. So
my favorite.
Yeah, exactly.
You've also got like the plane also borders similar region. Oh, you've sort of said that with the sort of regions of dust and vacuum, but there's a place that they call the wasting place, which I just thought was really interesting. So that it was with the disintegration of dust. So I know we'll come into dust in a second, but then with the emptiness of vacuum, the utter emptiness of vacuum, you have a place called the gritty residue, much like splintered glass, called the sparkling vast, which again, these names are amazing, and I just think it's just be like, here we are in the sparkling vast, prepare to die. That sort of like just this idea of an airless space that absorbs the heat from living things and then has a detrimental effect on folks' body, because the longer you are here for, the harder it becomes to move. It's almost like not even a lethargic thing. You just slow down. Maybe just that your heat, your energy is being sapped from you. And then you just can't move, and become as motionless as a statue in the ladies' ward, your favorite person in the whole world.
I love it. And the only thing I'd add to it is maybe it's like mirage-like and has some sort of charm effect onto it, because like the sparkles, you seem to think maybe it's heat or maybe it's gems, and people rush into it and you have to like make a spell save against charm or something like that to then overcome the fact that you will just, if you get too close to this, you'll want to rush into there and just become this. And there's just loads of statues of people like gleefully running in and looking for gems or holding ash in their hands as if they're holding like monetary value. I kind of like that as an idea.
Yeah, because that speaks to that whole like statues, gardens that Medusas have, where always people are looking frightened and stuff.
Exactly,
exactly. Oh, so cool! What a great idea.
Just a BG3, the spectator bit as well comes to mind, doesn't it? As well, when you think of that.
Amazing.
So we've kind of said, there's a few physical conditions which we'll come on to, but how and why is probably the bigger question. But how? Well, actually, there is a real big reason why, which I don't want to spoil. I won't spoil the lead on this, but there is something kind of actually hidden amongst this ash, a really big what moment, but let's leave that leave that as a little we'll leave that secret. But why on earth would you how on earth would you get here to Ash then?
Well, this is the thing, because again, like before we've always said how do you get to these para and quasi elemental planes, and it's usually through traipsing through the elemental planes first, but here it's like there's no, it sort of says the person that's speaking to this Deris, our point of view, talks about no one would actually go out of their way to come here. It's more likely you've been transported here accidentally, or for the actions of a vengeful enemy, which I'm like, ooh, we hadn't really discussed the idea of somebody, without their consent being thrown here by an actual person. We've talked about accidentally, being caught up in vortices, as a way. I just thought that was really interesting. But the one sort of portal it does talk about is in the plane of limbo, and this idea that it's quite big to use. 3 or 4 people can go through at the same time, which is useful because we've talked about gates that haven't been able to do that. And the key is simply the smothering of a flame against the side of the portal's stone
I like
frame.
that.
What a cool, that's just putting out a candle essentially. That's what that was. Yeah. But the trick to it, though, because it's called the Wandering Way, this particular portal, is that it moves constantly. So it's not as easy as like, it's easy to open, it's easy to get through, no problem at all, but it just wanders. So it never seems to stay in the same place for more than a day. So as soon as you hear like rumors of where it is, you got to book. If you need to get there, book your way there, because your friend might have been thrown there by this vengeful enemy, and you're like, right, how do we get there quickly? You either go the long way around via the other planes, or try and find the Wandering Way, which is like a quicker way to get there, but it might take you more time, which is the lesser of two evils in that sort of sense.
Yeah. No, exactly. They're both very cool. Again, the only thing it makes me wonder is when you see things like this, you're like, so are you doing, like, why are they doing that? Do you know, like, why does it wander? Why are you making it more complicated? Is that just because you think, that would make it an interesting, gives you a reason to be mucking about in limbo, to have to figure out where it is? Is that, I'm just thinking, is that why? I didn't know. That was all. I was just kind of...
I guess because obviously limbo, as we discussed in our outer plane stuff, obviously it's so changeable, so maybe it's because that's just more talking about the nature of limbo itself rather than the gate.
Yeah. Oh, actually, you know what? I didn't even think of that. That's bloody obvious.
Maybe. But also, maybe I just give it that thought of like, maybe what if we gave these gates, these portals, some sort of sentience? Because obviously we have, magically speaking doors and dungeons that go, halt, traveler, give us the password. Sense. So I think you can play it either way. I feel
they have implied that in other ones, haven't they? Sometimes that they are potentially. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's either sentience or it's the nature of a different plane that has an impact on it. But so you can choose either or. But I like the idea because it was like, what is the intention? Because it doesn't say, oh, it's because of limbo. So I think you could do that interpretation, because I think it's a good point, because then what does it mean for the other gates? That we can cross.
Exactly.
But then go on. You go for it. You were ready for it.
Well, no, because I was just going to say the next one you know a little bit more about, because on the DN's Book Club you did a whole episode with our friend of the show on Athas, didn't you? Which is Dark Sun.
Yes. Sorry, I was like, where is this going? Yes, Rob came and talked about Dark Sun. Yes, Athas is is the place of the Dark Sun setting, which is just a place that circles a bloody star. It is like a desert type setting, it talks about these like a sect essentially. So like again, it's just interesting because this is more like a lore thing than anything else. I think it's again another one of those things where before it's like, oh, here's a gate here, here's a gate in Elysium that's guarded by two people, and then that's that. Whereas here it talks about in Athas itself, that circles of bloated red star. The priests of this world worship the elements themselves, hoping to one day become the embodiments of air, earth, fire, and waters. There's a whole thing about sort of the religious side to Athas as well, which I highly recommend reading about. And again, your mileage may vary on that sort of point.
Yes.
But there is a sect that is dedicated to the Quasielemental plane of Ash, and they have now vanished without a trace. It's like, oh, secrets, and they have left behind one relic, which is the Obsidian Gate of Tor Galen, and supposedly it is named after the head of their order, but no one can say for sure. But in order to activate it, it must be heated until the stone is cut from glows red. So so the stone itself glows so hot, and then you can then go through. So you just have to be a little bit careful when going through it, because you don't want to touch the side of it essentially, because it's going to be hot. Yeah. So those are the two sort of named ways that they've named about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the other, there are vortices and things that are very ashy, like a volcano that's becoming dormant or has just gone through all its stuff. You could imagine, what's it called, that happens, the pyroclastic cloud? I forgot the term. When the big cloud comes down the ash, and that's how they've hidden Herculaneum and Pompeii and stuff like that. You can imagine if you went to a place like that, maybe there'd be vortices there.
Of course.
Or as it says, after the outcome of some supernatural force, like the flaming breath of a red dragon. So once the dragons burnt everyone to ash, you might then just go, imagine if that's the way it happened. You could brutal. if you wanted to really screw with your party, and maybe it was a near TPK, but one person survived. Your Karlak survives, like they always do, and you've taken down the dragon. The dragon's killed all your friends. There's just ash around you, and you go, "We've done it." And then you go, and just fall, whoa, and you fall into ash, and you're like, "Oh, bagger!"
It's always this way. You thought, "I've survived! Hooray, Kalu Kalay!" And then no,
exactly.
This is worse, much worse.
It's much worse. So talk about it being worse, much worse. The hazards that it has.
There's some really cool hazards here. Like,
There
obviously,
really
we've talked about the temperature stuff. So that idea that, you know, all the warmth. Basically, it has almost like a story about, like, the idea that Ash is now trying to regain the warmth that has been lost because the neighboring elemental plane of fire has consumed all the heat of it. It's desperately now almost like a hunger, trying to, like, snatch bits of heat of it. So as a result, obviously, you lose, you know, 2d6 points of damage per turn. It doesn't say what kind of damage, but presumably just normal damage that you can't have an resistance to, essentially, because, you know, all living things are going to be affected by this.
I think it says cold. It says just immune to cold damage, so it'd be cold damage.
Ah, okay. Well, no, it says all living things, even those who are normally immune to cold damage, are affected. So,
but if a body ain't magically protected from the cold, I assume it's cold damage. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. If you're immune, then you're still fucked.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And then obviously we've talked about breathing and vision as well before. Like, it's just you can't do it without any sort of magical help. Infravision doesn't work here either, because obviously that's the whole point, is like seeing heat sources, and all that gradual heat is like gobbled up essentially. But Hamilton,
I know I'm waiting for it.
3 other kinds of dangers. So first of all, we have Mage Powder, which is so bloody cool, and it's something I want to put into all my other games. It's an idea that the Ash not only absorbs heat. I like the idea that it just absorbs anything that makes you in a sense. So, like, obviously heat, but magical energy. And this idea that not only does it prevent any newly cast spell from taking effect, but it also absorbs energies directly from the caster, making it impossible for them to use their spells. It's almost like an anti-magic coating over you. And I think, again, a very cool mechanic, this idea that, so, you know, you cast the spell, do a roll, you know, saving throw versus the spell, whatever. Succeeds, no ill effect other than it's sort of probably predestined to fail. Fine. But if it fails, you are unable to work magic for at least an hour, but it affects 1 hour per point at which you fail the throw. So you miss. So it gives an example of, like, if you know, a 14 was needed and you come up with a 10, that is 4 points. So it indicates that 4 hours you will not be able to cast spells. Like, great. I love it. That's so good. Like, again, it's so variable, I know, but it really, I think, because spellcasters always have an interesting time at combat anyway. And I say that as someone who doesn't play spellcasters in combat, but the idea that I feel like, you know, if you're a spellcaster, you have to be constantly, right, listening and going, right, so this has happened. Okay, what spells can I use? And then there's this other thing going, what if you are just like, lol, misturn, you know, like, forgo your turn. What do you do instead? So the idea that maybe you have to bring weapons with you just in case, as a last resort, like, your spells are gone for. And this is me, I don't know, how do you feel about this? Like, would you tell them that thing about you've missed it, and then you don't tell them when the magic comes back? Because I don't know. We talked about this before.
Maybe I would just say you would. I think it's like, I think
it's tricky, right? Because I think for me, I would maybe enjoy not knowing. To make
an Arcana check to find out what they've done. If they succeed, I'd say you notice that your connection to the weave or whatever magical system you're using doesn't feel like it's working, and you can determine that you won't know. I won't tell you when it comes back, but I won't tell you now how long you're gonna have to wait, but I will tell you when it is back. Do you see what I mean? That's kind of how it'll be. That's probably the way that I play it.
I think that's better. It's just because I like the idea of, like, certainly in the middle of the fight, not knowing what to do, and because it's so immediate, like, oh, I don't have my spells. What do I do? So rather than going, oh, I don't have them for 4 hours, because I think, like, that means you change track quite quickly. I don't know.
Catching that and using that would be very, very useful. Do you know what I mean? Just getting that in, like, some sort of, like, projectile or something, and, you know, potential someone you might potentially interact with in the plane of Ash might be useful to use against. I don't know if you're fighting them.
That's good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, like, if you're stopping sieges and stuff, like, you know, mages and wizards, like buffing up the army, and then you just throw them and then they can't do anything. Yeah, that just takes out
exactly.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, I
think that'd be really cool.
Yeah,
I like the next one a lot because it really, really messes the players, and I think 2E and 1E did this a lot more than I think anything. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. There must be something in 5E that is these negative pockets, which very rarely a traveler in the Quasiplane of Ash encounters a pocket of negative energy, and they are as deadly as they're rare, because if you enter that place, it could either take a level from the player or a hit dice of each round. So 1 experience level, which is like
Brutal.
That's
Isn't it?
brutal. And I think the only thing I can think of is the deck of many things does that, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But it's you can nerf it and buff it as you like. And I think
there's adventures that I'm sure Gary Gygax did, which was like lol.
yeah, but there's nothing in 5e that's like, by the way, you just lost a level.
Yeah.
What? And you lose it. That's been another 6 seconds. The other one's gone. You what? You're using your actions here. Do something.
But I feel it's interesting that it says loses 1 experience level or a hit die, so it could be random, I guess. But also, I do feel like if you don't want if you don't want to be cruel as a DM, you can also get.
No, of course not. But I think.
No, but I think either you randomize.
I'd even have it that you can regain it X number of days after leaving the plane or something like that. But I think just to take it away from them for that like moment, or protection, not protection from curse, but like a greater restoration would restore you to those levels or something like that. But
I do like the idea that you it's okay. It's your turn. Just flip a coin. Heads. Yeah. Okay. You suddenly feel weaker. You lose 1 level experience, and then tails. Okay, you still feel weaker. A hit die goes, and just like so I like the idea of like giving that choice to the player in the sense of like I do like that idea because it doesn't say currently on that thing like how do you regain it. That's the only thing. Like it just says you lose it and that's it. It's kind of gone. So I do like your method of like once you leave the plane, slowly but surely, like recovery happens. Or the greater restoration, sure. But Hamilton, out of
surprise!
I'm a big fan of like tag yourself.
Okay, yeah. I'm with you.
I would tag myself as this last one as
sludge.
So I love it how it describes it. Once in a great while, some leatherhead will bring a large quantity of water in an otherwise bone-dry plane. So when that happens, the water mixes with the ash to form a mass of real viscous slime. For the most part, it's just goop that sits there and looks revolting. So I just don't know like how this would happen. That people just, I don't know, they're trying to make their way from, I don't know, water to fire or something like that, and they take the long way around, and it just upsets the car, and it's just, the fact is it just sits there, and it's just awful. I'm like, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
This sort of liquefied ash still absorbs the heat from the areas around it, but instead of just sucking the life out of a body, it also hardens to stone. So when you step into it, suddenly you're just trapped in this almost like quicksand type thing, and then hardens like cement, and you become entombed if you fall into it.
Not fun.
You can try and break yourself out of it. However, requires a bend bars and lift gates roll. So ye old stats there.
Yeah, ye old stats.
But if you fail, you can kiss your planar hopping rear goodbye. But,
no, great.
Thanks, Darius.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really cool. They're all 3 of them are really fun and don't require. There are tables you can actually get for the size of these, but I quite like the simplicity of them in the sense of like, there's a very simple rule that they work with, and they're very thematic and very particular to different playstyle peoples being affected by them, which I quite like the mage one particularly.
Yeah.
Good.
And just to say as well, so moving around, we always sort of talk about this. It's very similar to like traveling in the plane of Earth with Ash. It's just not as tightly compact. It's not denser as well, but it's also twice as likely to collapse around you because it's not as tightly packed. There's also gravity in this place, so you can't necessarily like just will yourself like down is here. There's a gravity to it. So when you find an open area that's where the ash forms clouds instead of solid matter, you can't fall from place to place as you might do in more open places. So it's a little bit safer in that sort of sense. If you could call your heat being sapped from you, losing all your magic, losing an experience level, and then being entombed in sludge. I don't know.
Yeah. All fine.
All good stuff.
Great stuff. Then the inhabitants, the classic, we always have a Quasielemental. I just can imagine they're a bit more ashy, but we'll talk about where they come from a bit later because it talks about the fortress of the Citadel of Former Flame, which is a kind of cool name. It could be like the Citadel of Embers or something like that, but I kind of like it. The ultimate goal of them, though, seems to be the destruction of the elemental plane of fire. After all, in the wake of fire, you find only ash. Seems a mite ambitious, but more power to them, I say. never had much use for the whole plane of fire myself. That's what the writer says.
Thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Darius. Animals. I did check this time with the book, which I think we're going to have to do an episode on, which is the
Fiend Folio stuff.
The Monstrous Compendium Volume 3, which is the inner planes. But there's a little creature called the Descreate, which is not in there, but it's like a beaver and a bill, like a duck, which I think is
like a platypus?
duck-billed platypus. Yeah, exactly.
It's hot as a furnace, it says here.
Yeah. Oolish swimming through the ash. They're not as tasty, but at least they're harmless. Soot snakes are the only sort of mostly harmless creature I could think of. Canny bloods will watch where they walk, as these snakes often lair in eternal pockets of elemental pockets, various types. The most dangerous creatures are the quasi-elementals, as we mentioned, and they're pretty. And it then also said wraths.
Yeah, these sort of bloodthirsty monsters, if there were any, always on the hunt. These vicious creatures work together in deadly packs, tearing apart whatever they can with their paralyzing stare. But they're real afraid of loud noises. So if you're just like, boo, clapping your hands like, go on, shoo, then you can scare them or distract them for a few valuable seconds whilst they give them like basically a run for their money, essentially. But my favourite, the Zorn, are here as well. Zorn! All is Zorn. I love Zorn.
We are Zorn.
In the sense of like there's kind of a special kind of ash version of it. They're just not subjected to the heat draining effects of ash, which I think are great. And they have these are basically abilities that, the rumors that they have the ability to work with magic, but no one knows the chance of it, which is interesting because before Zorn are just like, they just eat gold, like, basically like Cookie Monster, like like crystals and all that sort of thing. So I like the idea that like, oh, magic,
yes,
rings,
yum, Zorn eats,
Zorn eats,
and then Zorn eats. And with that, then there's a few other little bits and bobs, but the most common that comes up twice in this is the undead, and that is because there was a very big undead person here before, wasn't there, Fiona? Which we'll come on to in our major players, which links very directly to the fact that there is a nomadic army of ghouls and ghasts known as the Flesh Renders who run around. And there's a lot of undead generally in the negative energy plane because they gain life energy. They survive and exist. It's always said when we did the negative energy plane, it's got more creatures in it because there's so much undead just floating about. So here we have. Who do we have? Who do we have hiding out?
Well, there's two people it talks about in the major players. We'll go for that first one, the former one, who I feel is like, we need to put someone in here to be like the opener before the sort of headline act. So we've got Hadjen, who is an Ashkenazi. But has so little thing about it, so it doesn't know who their elemental sire was, but they're sworn to find out. So okay, there's a motivation, I guess. Along the way, they've gathered some magical weapons and items. So again, could be a good sort of like story hook to be like, oh, we need a special kind of item. I wonder if Hadjen has it. Has your favorite thing? Has a friend that's a white dragon.
I know. I do like that. But that sentence got kind of lost in my memory when I got to the next sentence. Like, what? What?
Yeah. But it also, they can survive because they've got a magical necklace.
Yes, which is very cool. And a nice little NPC to meet, as you said, and maybe they can give you a little travel on their dragon to get about places. But I think that's, which I think is kind of cool. And I like it. But come on, let's get to it now. Come on, I'm getting antsy. Come on.
I'm sorry. So you might have heard of a little guy. It's just
missing an eye.
Missing an eye, bit of a hand as well. Decided want to be a very, very powerful wizard on Earth even, and became a lich. You've heard of Vecna, right?
Who?
The most powerful being that's ever lived.
Exactly.
The lich god Vecna, the one-eyed, one-hand. So and it's interesting, obviously, as we're recording this now, in the 50th year, we've got a huge lot of Vecna stuff coming out at us now.
And I am super excited for the Vecna stuff. I think it's it's great to have a really good villain. I just don't think we've had a great villain since Strahd, and I know it's the same villain. I know it's still a villain we've already had, but it's great to have a big villain character leading a story again, because I know I don't want to spoil the carnival one, Witchlight, because that does kind of have one, but it's not the same. I don't think.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Vecna one, from what I understand, the ruins of evil, I think that's what it's called. It draws in quite a lot of NPCs we've seen in over previous adventures as well. So you got Mordekaiden, we've got Tasha's in there as well. So we've got loads of the people coming in to stop this happening. Nice. So it's basically the Marvel version. I
also want to play it.
Yeah, I know, and it's a high level one as well. But that's related in this particular inner plane. Yeah. It's interesting. Again, obviously, it talks about how Vecna migrated to the Quasielemental plane of Ash many years ago, and then basically kicked out some Doomsguard out of this fortress called I'm going to say this wrong, isn't it? Is it Cavitus? I just assume it's like a cavity is what it is. It's basically a skull-shaped citadel that the Doomsguard had. And there's a little bit more of the Doomsguard later on in the Planeswalker bit. But it talks about how basically populating this realm with followers or imprisoned enemies. Well, who is to tell the two apart? But then, not so long ago, Vecna and all of his followers vanished and left behind the skull-shaped keep, essentially. And it's still full of evil spirits. So if you want to go, you can. Wouldn't advise.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
But the fact that Vecna is no longer there, it doesn't make it safer. I think it's like what's been left behind. He's moved to a different plane, but he's left all his stuff back at his house. That's
yeah, it's definitely going to be slightly worse than trying to break into Kevin McAllister's house. That's for sure.
Oh my goodness! Can you? Yeah, how much traps? Yeah, this is like big paint of doom, just like splashing and killing you instantly.
Exactly. But the site itself is very cool, and you're wearing a very thematic T-shirt. I see, Fiona. Was that on purpose, or was that?
No, not at all. It's just one of my favorite T-shirts.
But I love how it's they pushed out the Doomguard, because we do come onto them a little bit, as you said in here, and they, the Doomguard being the propensitors of the heat death of the universe, really. But unlike the Heralds of Dust, who are very much more the emo, it's all ending, let's go contemplate the end of the world, eat death of the universe, man. The Doomguard riding into the apocalypse like Mad Max style, brandishing all weaponry that they can find to help endeavor to bring about entropy, because they are pretty much the Mad Max of the universe. In Sigil they are the forgers. They run the forges and the armories of Sigil, and they're very punk. And the whole idea behind them is they just have wild raves for the end of time. So they're very Mad Max inspired. So for them to have been the ones that they the punks got kicked out by the actual super goth, I kind of like that in some respects. Kind of funny from their sort of skull fortress. And it's old, and it's older than Vecna, and that's old. And some tales tell that older than Doomguard, they originally lived here, but in some lost race of bloods who worship death in a way that even the Dustmen couldn't even understand, which are the Heralds of Dust. There's even said to be places within Cavicius that Vecna was afraid to go. But that sounds like nothing but Screed if I've ever heard any.
Yeah, I was going to say, Vecna is not the sort of person that suffers anxiety, I'll be honest.
Yeah, but imagine if there was the only thing I could think of is because the floating skull, there were floating skulls in Spelljammer, weren't there? Which was something, but I've forgotten what they were.
No, not just flame skulls, right?
I think there was floating skull fortresses.
Oh,
that
right.
Flew about.
Yes, no, yeah.
But even some beholder, ultimate beholder god, could be something that I think Vecna may be scared of, or even Baal themselves. A being who was actually mortal, who rose to godhood themselves and killed the god of murder. I think Vecna might possibly be scared of them. So that's sort of fun things you could put in there potentially. Just thinking. But yeah, as we said, ghosts, specters, all other things like that just floating around.
It's the worst kind of haunted house. You see them at fun fairs and stuff, and you're like, I don't want to go in there because that looks dangerous. Not just scary, but also dangerous. I think that's what I imagine with this skull keep just appearing. You're like, you know what? No, I'm not paying to get in there.
Yeah, exactly. You're kind of if you were in the D&D world, you would just be like, that's a trap. No,
that's a trap if ever I saw one.
Yeah, exactly. But also the very D&D-ness that it kind of outlines in this, that Vecna was if you were someone who's reaching for power in a D&D world, you're going for godhood, aren't you? Because like you could just gain followers. He wants to overthrow the other powers of Earth, but he also plans to become the patron power of all evil undead. You could do that in D&D because if you just get enough followers that believe you're the god of all undead, then you get enough power to become, which I think is kind of weird.
Yeah,
I just thought that was
no. Well, that sort of theory, that sort of thought process, that's in if you ever read Neil Gaiman's stuff. So American Gods follows that idea as well. So yeah, no. So if you're interested in that sort of idea of like getting more followers gets you more power, read American Gods because you have stuff like the gods of the internet in there, and they are super powerful. And
I really enjoyed the TV show, and I did enjoy particularly. You're in my density. What's his name? The guy who plays, I've forgotten his name. The guy who plays George McFly. He's the god of TV.
Oh, oh God, no! Why have you done this to me now? Yeah, George McFly. So that's not Mark McFly. Yes, he. Oh, that's gonna kill me. I'm gonna look it up now. Because I know. I'm doing it. You get that before me because I've got a new.
Crispin Glover.
Crispin Glover. Yes,
Crispin Glover. He plays that so well. I'm like perfect choice for that.
Yeah. So let's move on then to the Citadel of the Former Flame.
Yes.
So this is carved out of the very ash of the plane and then magically fused together. So it's one of those things, when you see like location, but then like the grand designs is what I'm thinking as well. So someone's gone, why don't we make it out of reclaimed materials of the plane itself? And you're like, really? The ash? Okay. But one thing is for sure, that this place never looks the same way twice. It is the capital of this empire and the home of Gazra, the shifting emperor, who weirdly is not in the major players thing. I think with a name like Shifting Emperor, or at least a title like that, you need a little bit more information on that. But it's not really accumulation status, but maybe they're growing. But it doesn't really say like what their motivation is. It just Gazra just uses undead guardians of Rand Citadel in addition to his own kin. So we've got the ghouls again, the wraiths, the specters, etc. Visitors to the Citadel of Former Flame find it's not only devoid of heat, but also of light. So no manner of illumination, either magical or mundane, functions within its structure. So anyone that goes in and does manage to see the insides would be instantly driven balmy. One thing I do like, which is a kind of a side to this, is I like the word balmy to be used rather than the word insane. I think because I feel like, again, because there's obviously the wording about certain things isn't great at certain times. But I think balmy, I hope it lessens to it. It might not be a suitable replacement, but I thought, I was like, I quite like that because it keeps in the theme of it. But also, again, it just feeds into that sort of image I had before of this haunted house, that you going into a haunted house with all the lights switch off, you put up your own light and you see something horrible and you're like, you know what, I don't know why I paid £2 to come in here. Why would I do this to myself?
But yeah, I feel like you're the sort of person that might do that though, Fiona.
Oh, but I'll be the one that'll be A, talking about it, B, the one that screams, and then laughs about the fact I screamed, and then afterwards go, guys, that was such a great experience. So
let's do it again.
I go through the whole circle of emotions where everyone else is like, Fiona, no.
Fabulous. I think all three of the places in here are really well put together and fleshed out. Again, the only thing I'd like is a couple of maps would have been nice, but it's fine.
Yes, absolutely.
I really think a nice little adventure, like I do miss the little adventures that you got in the other planes existence, and one particularly in like Vecna's Cavicius would be kind of nice, or even in the Crumbling Citadel, which is the next place, which is where Doomguard went and got built after they got kicked out of their old home. It very goes into a little bit talking about how each of the elemental plane, negative quasi-elemental planes have a Doomguard outpost, and they've all got very different sub-factions, because in this time that this is written, it's written after Faction War, as we mentioned before when we had the Heralds of Dust, and the Lady of Pain has put a ban on a few of the naughties and sent them on little exile, and so they've sort of in their each individual stations they've got around the negative energy planes. This one is where they seem to feel that the rate of decay, even though that's what the entropy is what they're always looking for, they think it's going too fast, and so they have a reclusive Doom Lord of Ash called Devland who lives here and is the one that's sort of heralding this view. it then says, I like this little part when it goes, now here's the piece of work, and I mean constant work. The place constantly breaking apart and falling down. A body think it was built in the plane of dust. Nobody knows exactly why the place continually crumbles, unless, of course, the original architects and builders are meant for it to be that way, which is a possibility. And I was like, yeah.
I was gonna say that's something that I can imagine, in your experience of being an architect, a client goes, so we wanted to constantly be decaying, and you're like, oh, what is this brief? And just...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've had some wild briefs, but I've never had that.
No.
Well, actually, I've had, I've put Core 10 on, which is ever rusting steel that doesn't degrade.
Ooh.
So Core 10 is that very orange, when you see that orange metal. That's called Core 10, which is it stabilizes after it rusts. So it slowly rusts, and then once it goes there, it then creates its own coating that is protective, and it will stay rusty for a very long time.
Wow, I did not know. The more you know. So
the more you know. Yeah. So I've actually kind of had that. But then as well, it says the crumbling citadel's a vast structure that holds 400 souls, which is quite big, and they've got links, they've got portals through to their faction in Sigil, which is a good note to make, like, here's a portal, by the way, that you could have told us about in the front.
But that's fine, don't worry about
if you want to get here, you can go via the Doom Guards at the armory. And they go here looking for useful, valuable materials, which I assume is to sort of put them back into, doesn't really say, but to make into actual different, like, armories maybe, or stuff like that. And maybe that's something that you, like, any of the elements, and I thought, like, if you're looking for these things, but you don't want to take your characters into the inner plane, but you're thinking, oh, I want to touch it, I want to sort of interact with it on a very minor level. I think this, and when we talked about the Doom Guard in the actual Heralds of Dust, in the negative energy plane, you could have any of these things you think, oh, I'm reading this book, this sounds great, but I don't know how to run it, but I love some of the elements or the materials and stuff like that. Maybe like just setting up shop, or you go on a travel, you just go to the crumbling citadel on like a shopping trip, and it's literally very much like it's all kept very safe. You maybe have a little battle with some ghouls or ghasts who invade it very briefly. So you get to experience it a little bit, dip your toe, as they say, and then get your mage powder or whatever which you want to use in your next battle, and then you bugger off, and that could be it, really. And I think it's a nice way of bringing you in.
I like that. And just to quickly touch on the small group that it sort of highlights in this sort of thing, the sifters, which I think again, I really like this idea that they, in the Doomsguard, they look through all the ash, find anything that's not completely consumed or destroyed, and they find things of value. So again, it's another reason for like, oh, we can try and see what turns up this day at the crumbling citadel, and what have they got for sale. So like either valuable metal or gemstone, but they're distinguishing the different types of ash and cinders as well from burning different materials. So you've got that almost like a scientist element, the alchemicalist as well, which I thought would be quite interesting to have NPCs talk to you about stuff. So maybe they're trying to get a different coating on the various items. So we talked about before about when you get silvered weapons or adamantium, maybe if you can get some of the cinder stuff, maybe you can make like almost like a armor of Hadar type thing, which would like suck heat in, or just different kinds of things. I think that just is, for me, that's kind of we can make some new magical items or improve weapons,
or just spells,
or spells.
Spell books that they might have, like people might have made, or Vecna's left, or someone in Vecna's group might have made, or something. That could be kind of interesting.
It's interesting because this is the most I've seen when we've been reading this book that's had such a big bit on a particular faction. Like you said, it talks before, like it sort of mentions it a little bit about the faction war and how the armory, the headquarters in Sigil is no longer there. Which is really cool. It's one of those things where I'm like, because we had this with the outer planes to an extent as well. It had like, here's where various factions would be in the outer planes, and like here's some more about, like we had that whole bit about the mathematicians and all that sort of thing. I kind of wish we had a bit more for the inner planes as well. I know it sounds so silly because it's nice and short and sweet as a book, but it's quite nice to be like, have a little bit more and be like, because the outer planes went into so much detail about it, and then the inner planes feels like at times it's been left because it's like, oh well, you know all about the factions, and I'm like, I don't really. It's been a long time since I've read about them. So that's the only thing I thought it'd be nice to have it, because I really enjoyed reading about it, because it gave a little personality to these Doomsguard people and like why they would be here.
But I just think the game is, we've said this a couple of times, the game is, one pillar of it is role play, and it feels what you get to bring you into roleplay is people's places, religions, politics, all these sorts of things that help build the spaces and the realities that you're going to be existing in. Just having effects and damage and monsters doesn't build a rich narrative. It just builds things to get in your way. But what makes you want to go somewhere and have enjoyable role-playing sessions is environments. And I think it's the one thing that has inevitably lacked in this whole thing comparative to the other ones, where there's not like the back in Arborea, where you just could get tied up into this constant partying, or even in Isgard, where you've actually got like everyone's getting, you've got that place, everyone's getting dropped. You've got that one where you all get stuck there endlessly hungering, there was that one. So there's
the big tables and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it's those things, and this one does that with the Doom Garden and Vecna space, give you just like things to be engaging with, and at least like the Doom Guard having all these different factions, sub-factions, you kind of think, oh, well, that's one, let's make the other ones, and how can we make that interesting? I don't know.
No, I agree. I think
engages me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think essentially it's like, here's small little plot hooks or story hooks, and it's the same with that sort of final section. It talks about like, you can come and talk to like the Doom Guard here. We always need people going to check in on Vecna's old place, and you're like, no, we don't. We never need that. But the only thing I was going to say is, again, I always talk about spell keys because I know I'm obsessed with them. I get it. But the idea of spell keys in Ash take the form of cinders collected from burning various things. So again, that idea that you've got, I've got it here somewhere, trying to find the jar, and he goes, yes, water, oh no, sludge, and then you're just like you're entombed as a result. But like, again, long-term fire spells like
create and destroy sludge.
Yeah, create. That's me. That's just the spell. Tag yourself. It's Fiona. Create. It's create sludge.
Love it.
Yeah, still like certain fire spells won't necessarily work long-term because obviously take the fire out because of the plane. But yeah, there you go. So that is the Quasi-Elemental Plane of Ash.
Indeed. It's I liked it. I think it's a fun one. It really engaged me much more than any of the others so far.
It's one of my favorite ones to date, I think, because there's so much to it. And I know like sometimes I go, oh, there's too much stuff in it. But I think those three hazards, plus the Doom Guard, plus those interesting, although it could be similar sites as well.
Yes.
I think all of it is like perfect in terms
perfectly
of,
balanced,
and also different enough. Like, I'm excited to be like, I want to oh, they've rolled really badly, right, they're going there, whereas some of the others I'm like, would I go there or not? Like, I would definitely randomly rolled that would be put on my link of like a spell goes wrong, they end up in Plane of Ash. So yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. No, I like that. So moving on from Ash to the next one, which is Dust. Dust. Now, this is interesting because we have a Sandman talking to us here, which we did come across in the Fiend Folio. It's not in the Monstrous Compendium, but they just come up to you, and if you get near them, you fall asleep. That's it. And then they'll pick you up and take you to bed and leave you there and like cut all out the way safe and then walk away, which I think is kind of sweet.
I like that idea. Although it does say like here, it's like this is a rather bitter Sandman, and then so I like the idea. It's like, for God's sake, fine, and then just records themselves into whatever like data pad.
Want to know about it? Silence. Listen now, and I have to tell you the hell that is my home. Exactly, and it's like and it's just, and that is kind of what it is. It's the intersection between Earth and the negative energy plane, and it's just an endless swathe of just darkness awash with minute particles. So it's that bit where the light comes in through your window and picks up all the dust particles. As you get towards the elemental Earth, you can find dust growing thicker and thicker, and in time, drifting clouds of matter begin to coalesce to form solid bodies, which is called the tumbling rocks, where
scary.
Masses of stone crash into each other with tremendous force, which I love. In terms of Ash, it creates the same thicker clouds, which is the wasting place, which is the same name it has on the other side, so they are the same. You get torn apart by natural abrasions of dust or drained of all heat by the ash, which is just lovely. When you get to salt, the dust becomes more and more crystalline, And that meets where these two meets. You get the consumption, a dangerous realm, which all fluids transform into scintillating granules. Obviously, such an alteration proves fatal to almost any living thing.
To say.
Death comes in many forms on the plane of dust.
Personally, what a great name, consumption. And then it's the idea is like, we haven't heard from Simon in a while. Simon turns around and like their eyes are completely crusted over.
Yeah, exactly.
They can't speak because their mouth is full of like crystalline saliva and like, their whole blood. And I was like, God, this is awful.
It is awful.
Great... Oh yeah. And
but there's an even better name though, isn't there? Because the last one is the Storm of Annihilation, which is where it meets a negative energy plane, where deadly elemental forces whip up storms of highly destructive particles. Here, negative energy not only breaks matter up, but literally causes it to violently explode. Those foolish enough to come here deserve to die.
Wow. This bitter Sandman, whose name we do not know, really has it here.
Yes, he does, really. So how do you get here?
How we get here? So what sane person would seek out a land where ultimate disintegration is surely the only fate? No one is certain how many portals there are, but one is that there are fewer today than there always were, because this idea of decay and change and stuff, and like it's like almost diminishing returns. So I guess at one point maybe there won't be any ways actually into the plane of dust, just because there's this idea of things are crumbling and changing all the time. There is believed, obviously, the Doomguard, we've talked about them before, have a number of portals that only they can access. There is so some of these, for example, they've got a large mysterious gate from a crumbling structure that stands in the remote corner of Elysium, of all places, which I always find quite funny, because he's like, oh, isn't Elysium great? And I was like, what's in that corner? Oh, that's the portal to the plane of dust, Simbo. You must never go there. You know?
No.
Although the portal still works, even though it is abandoned, almost forgotten. But no one knows what kind of key might open this particular gate. Some say that the key to this gate is no key at all. Ooh.
Yeah, don't like that.
It's a bit of a cop out. I agree. We've also got in the Grey Waste, there rests on one of the great many vast battlefields, a large iron ring that is old and rusted and looks like it might crumble into dust at any moment. Depending on the current status of the Blood War, this gate may or may not be approachable, so that's obviously a location thing. But as often, it lies in the middle of a great big battle, ranging from a skirmish to an epic clash even of armies. To trigger it, and an individual may only need to break their enemy's sword over their knee. But this could be problematic for creatures who do not have knees, but most of them find it simple enough. So I quite like that as an action. If you go as an adventuring party and go, oh shit, we don't have any swords, and someone just grabs another person's swords and just breaks it over the knees, and then it opens, oh, an enemy is within us. There's a betrayer.
Oh.
You know, that's what I was like.
Well, you're my enemy now because you just broke my fucking sword.
It's like, how cool. So I quite like that I like these very esoteric conditions to do something like that. It's not necessarily like, oh, spill some blood. Here is a random bone to add to the ever diminishing pile of bones or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, so, I just thought that was quite interesting.
No, I do like that. That's very cool. And the vortices are fun. There's says like hearts of great deserts, or sand, or gritty soil can sometimes spawn such vortices. If there's big amounts of in Athos, it mentions there's a vast sea, powdery silt lie waiting to consume travelers. The top shelf of my wardrobe, perfect place to find
the bed,
all those sorts of places.
Various many things we have on the walls, like
exactly, minis that get covered in dust.
not minis.
So that's all other things, but there are a few hazards, but mainly the best one is disintegration. So with every passing hour, the detrimental nature of this realm erodes all non-native living and unliving matter. This process begins the instant you arrive and continues until magically halted or your complete destruction occurs. You have to make a save for every turn spent against breath weapon. Failure inflicts 2d6 points of damage, while success halves that. When a visitor's hit points fall to 0, she breaks up as if she had been annihilated by a disintegration spell. And that's it. And non-living objects must also do that or crumble to dust. Normal healing magic does not restore hit points lost to this process unless accompanied by restoration or a negative plane protection or similar spell.
It's quite brutal, isn't it? Like again, very Marvel in that. Yeah,
Dusty.
I don't feel good, Mr. Stark. And then just
Oh, don't make me cry.
Then several years, the
I
blip
cried
has
at that.
happened. Oh, it was very sad. It was a very cool thing to do. I was just like, we're just gonna wipe the board clean. And obviously, then a couple of films later, we'll bring it back. It's fine. But yeah.
Still,
but that's how I would describe it. This idea of like, people are like, like going and like, help,
Yeah, exactly.
But that's why I wondered, like, how you describe it. It's like, you take it as damage, etc. And then if you pull them back, do they still have missing like parts of themselves? Like how
I would just say you're constantly like flaking away, like you're just flaking away the whole time you're there. So just every time you're there, you've got bits of your body flaking away, and even if you've got protection, you see it flaking away, but then reforming.
Like, eating at the protection, like that's not a barrier thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Although when you say flaking away, I do think like, it's got some
scabies,
dandruff, like Head and Shoulders. That's what you need,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then breathing. There's not much to breathe. There's non-natives cannot breathe without magical aid. It's so thin, non-magical flames would burn. Fire could even ignite in the plane of dust. Surely too would decay and crumble like everything else. So there's no natural light. So it's only magical illumination that means that you can see to 90 feet. Infravision though does work because there's none of this cold or anything like that.
Probably as soon as you hit that sort of the border between dust and then you're like, what's that coming towards me? And it's like, oh no, it's just the plane of ash comes and just consumes you as a result.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's one of these table things, is
it's cool, this idea.
It is cool.
I do like this danger. So it talks about it as cobwebs. So here and there, floating particles of dust collide and stick together. Occasionally these form into strands or strings and then structures that resemble great cobwebs. So you can imagine, like, as you're sort of moving around this plane, that there's suddenly like, so you just see these cobwebs, so you instantly like, oh my god, there's gonna be a massive spider here of some sort, and there isn't. But this idea that as soon as you get caught into them, they are very sturdy. These things held together by the negative energy that saturates this place. No physical force can break them. Powerful spells like disintegration can destroy it, but anything less than that will fail. So disintegration is a powerful spell.
Is it an 8th or 9th level spell? I forget.
Yeah, it's in those sort of regions for sure. So if you come into contact with a cobweb, immediate saving throw versus paralysis is required. Failure indicates that the web has snared its victim. Once this happens, only a spell that can break up the energy of the web, so like disintegration or negative plane protection, can free the trapped explorer. So if your fighter or your barbarian gets stuck and they're on their own, that's pretty much it. But this is the thing as well. So if you're like, oh god, they're stuck, I know, I do have my last disintegration spell. You have to be careful because there's a good chance that you're going to hurt or kill the ensnared individual, which I'm like, ooh, that could be quite good as well. But once you're caught in the web, here's when the effects begin, because obviously it's kind of sentient, this web. It feeds on your energy, and each round the imprisoned body will diminish in some way. And so this is where the chart that you mentioned comes in. We do a die roll, and it could be like you lose a point of any of these sort of main stats, strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, I almost forgot then, wisdom and charisma. And then the 7 and 8 on the D8 is lose an experience level, which is brutal as always, and then age 10 years.
Yeah.
Which is pretty bad. Again, I don't know. Again, this is our sort of my limited knowledge of like first and second edition D&D. But obviously, some races, there's a certain lifeline to this. So if you've got your Aarakocra, for example, they don't really live that long. It's like I think at most maybe 30 years, maybe that. It's I
think it's even that. I think it's like
less than that.
Under 20. Yeah, I think so. You could.
It's pretty brutal. That bird becomes like fossilized instantly.
Yeah, not great. I do like it. I like the sort of connotation of like dusty places having cobwebs, and I kind of like it. It's a bit of a stretch in terms of like how it comes about, but yeah, I think they're a fun, different thing. Like when you try, probably someone's like, how do we make something that works with dust?
But also, like I said, like because instantly when you think of cobwebs, I go, oh, it's a massive spider. So there's that still fear of something coming along, like you're moving about in it, but actually that's not the scary bit. That is like the scary bit is the trap itself. Which I quite, that's for me just a little bit of a change, a little bit of difference to it. So
that's
very
true.
Much like that.
No, I like that. The Dust Devils are kind of just come along around, and they basically act as disintegration spells on people when they come into contact with solid matter.
They're just storms, aren't they? They're not sentient.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No, I don't think it states that. But from time to time, these currents feed on each other to become stronger and stronger. But I don't know. It's like everything in D&D. Everything might be sentient, or everything might not be. Like
it's just, I guess because they are called like dust storms and dust devils in the US, aren't they? Some sandstorms. So that's what it is. But in my head, just because anything that says like devil, I'm like, it's alive. It's gonna kill. It's gonna do some sort of deal with me.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I don't think it. I think it is just that. It's just moving about. And then you've got negative energy pockets again, like you have in the other ones, which. In this one, unlike the other one where it did do the sort of drained you of experience level, this one just drains away life just as if you had surrendered to the embrace of a vampire, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So it's just a little slightly different, which I assume you just take the rules for that. Which
I was
is
gonna say, it doesn't necessarily go see the monster compendium 3 or anything like that about rules of vampire. I think to be fair, it starts off strong with cobwebs. And then Dust Devils, I'm like, fine.
Yeah.
I think that for me is like the cool hazard is the first one, and then the other two, it makes sense. Yeah. But like, I guess because I feel now we've been spoiled by 3 really good hazards in Ash.
Yes,
and then
exactly.
A really good hazard at the beginning of Dust, and then I'm like, okay, I guess Dust Devils, I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess because the other thing as well, I don't know about sound in these places per se. Like again, Dust Devils, I imagine would be quite noisy, and for some reason I feel like Dust.
But if you have no atmosphere.
That's true. There's no atmosphere, is there? So again, because I feel like Dust is obviously like museum quiet. Like it's a silent death. It's the thing. So
I see.
So I guess it could be scary. This Dust level, if there's no sound at all coming towards you, it could be quite terrifying. But I think the cobweb thing is definitely more. Yeah, because you can't scream. No one can hear you in
the plane of dust. No, exactly. Unless you you can hear a telepathic scream.
Oh my god, that's so awful. Stop it. I can't concentrate.
You can't even close off a telepathic scream.
No.
There you go. Moving about is like air. You do the eternal plunge if you want, or if you are closer to the plane of earth, you can do the tumbling rocks, which have a bit more
I also feel like you wouldn't want to tumble like the air, because there's so many cobweb things. I would be like, I'm not going to tumble. I need to know. No. I need to basically be like up. That is down. Up. That's
exactly.
I can't just go into this like willy-nilly.
100%. Yeah. That's so true. And in that, the creatures then who live here equally are seemingly having a bad day and not too interested. It also like they like to probably. It feels like the Quasielementals here. They form no social groups larger than small bands, build no strongholds, as it said. They just wander about the plane seeking anything to destroy. You're like, you just feel like everyone's having a bad day and they want everyone else who's here to have a bad day too. Like the Sandman. And you've got, as I said, the Dust Methods, Dune Stalkers, Sandlings, Sandmen. I all tried to look for these. They all sounded interesting, but none of them were in the book. But they look really cool online, the Dune Stalkers. They look really cool. And attack them on sight or flee. That's what it says.
It's like, just don't bother. I saw that.
And then you get dust elementals are not unknown, or they're not especially common, which is like biting flies and crawling insects swarm with the dust, while the multiverse slowly gaze around them and collects here. Probably the most dangerous creatures are those beasts, which we'll talk about, like Zorn, Sandling, Silkworms, and Dow, which are all from the elemental plane of Earth. Magic devouring Ashar, if you found in large numbers, which are cool. They drift about in nomadic communities and seek out those able to wield magic.
Ooh.
They have little to do with other nations plane, but are menace to any plane walker who makes their way here.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of cool. They sound really interesting.
Yeah, I guess magic devouring. So I wonder if they can smell magic in a way. So that's why they hunt out and they're like, "Oh, looks like magic's back on the menu, boys," and just like make their way towards you.
I love it. Major players, there's only the one that it mentions, which is Alu Khan Sang, which is the Quasi-Elemental, describes himself as the High General or the Wind of Destruction. And those are fair enough terms. It says this Quasi-Elemental warlord has managed to assemble a legion of its peers under a banner of ultimate chaos and carnage.
Nice.
It appeals to nothing more than desire for absolute destruction and violence.
Okay.
And they find that motivation. So you're like, okay, simple.
It would be nice if there was a bit more to it. Like, I guess.
Yeah, it feels a bit.
Yeah, it feels
like everyone else.
Yeah, like it's so what? I guess is it like you're totally right, because everyone's having a bad day. I was like, we're just going to just seek and destroy. But is there any reason? Did they have like, we want to destroy everything, but we can't get into the elemental plane of Ash for some reason?
Yeah.
And we want to take over that. Like,
it'd be so much more interesting if they were, instead of being like aggressive, because it doesn't feel like this plane is aggressive, if they were so much more like placid.
Yes,
and it was
absolutely.
like, and it was much more like you get enticed into their way of being, and you slowly lose your charisma, and you slowly like just float away with them, and so they seem ultimately charming and very aloof, but you slowly realize the sinister machinations at rest, which is that they draw you in.
Yes.
And it's very like siren-esque or something, I don't know, or, you know, in the sense of just like, oh, this is come stay with us, it's fine, we've got places for you to chill, just take a load off your feet. Oh, your feet have gone, don't worry about it now. You don't need those. Oh, now your legs are, you know, and then slowly but surely you're just like disintegrating, and then dust, and you just see constantly out of their citadel like plumes of dust floating off as another adventurer gets disintegrated.
That's so true. Like, because it does feel like very aggressive. Where I think you're right. It feels like one of those like as if a mindfulness app gained AI sentiment and also a death wish of some sort, and it's just like, breathe in, breathe out for eternity. You know, that's
exactly. It's like that. Exactly.
I really like, and that, like you said, the placidness of it, because again, it feels very slow. This place, again, it's a very quiet sort of. It's like a slow death, if anything. So so maybe I guess because those previous sort of hazards we had, like you lose this every turn or something like that, but maybe it's a lingering effect, maybe. I don't know. Or
maybe they're the ones putting up the cobwebs. Like, that's the thing, they're spider people, you know? And like, that would give that more thematic. And actually you realize the main citadel is this huge arachnopolis. I don't know.
Like a big cocoon of some sort.
Of ever decaying dust freaking spiders.
That's slowly, like, you can see it like almost beating as it's adding more stuff to it. And so then they harvest the final the husks of people left. And then reuse them. So
maybe they're like and they can transform into humanoids or something like that. Or they're like Lolth and they're like humanoid bodied. And so like they sort of talk to you very normally and stuff like that, but then they've got this huge arachnid skeleton, and maybe they're like liches and undead as well, and make it all look creepy.
I'm thinking now, like, you know, anglerfish, the idea that they've got this little bit in front of them, and you can't see into the darkness and all that sort of thing. You can't see too far, and then you get closer, and it's just a whole body, exactly. And then they just wrap you up in the cobweb and slowly drain you of your life, and then suck you dry from the they do, like they make you into puddles of ash. You've made this place so much more interesting as a result. Because otherwise I was like, I guess, but we've had all this aggressive politics. We've had wanted to destroy mindlessly. So I really like that.
Maybe maybe they make vortices to dust. Like, they actively go out. And one of the things you could do is, like, in any of these dust, like, you know, like those crabs that live in the sand and come up and make little holes. Maybe they make huge ones of those, and sometimes on any plane of existence, people just go missing because they just get sucked in and taken to the plane of ash, you know, and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. Makes it so much more interesting. It is like almost like positive mental health, that's sort of like the mindfulness thing to an extreme of just lethargic, of giving up. Giving up. It's not worth it, but it's okay. It's all about, you know, you take on that whole like succumbing, you know, it's like you got to subject yourself to it. Do you know what I mean? You got to, like, was it I forget what the term is. It's like let go, you know, you got to let go. Just let go of all those worries, let go of everything. You just be the water in the stream, you know, just be, and then
a dust particle
floating in the air. Exactly. That's it.
Oh, I love that. But there's only one big site that's talked about in the plane of dust, which I guess is fine. It's
paragraph and a half.
It's like, okay, but again, it's the Doomsguard sort of like great fortress here, and citadel of Alvicius, sort of Alluvius, I guess, because more of an American way of saying it, right? So Alluvius, it stands upon a slowly rotating disk of elemental earth and is insulated from the consuming nature of the plane by a continual potent wall of force spell, which is pretty good. Its none is so heavily populated as this immense fortress, so there's lots of life here, really. So again, that could be quite interesting. That's where you get picked up. Some, like, a whole crowd of Doomguard managed to pull you from the cobwebs, but then you'd learn, like, you know, it wasn't your time, perhaps, or like why they're here. But yes, the plane of dust exemplifies these blustering fools' philosophies, and then the wonderful, rather bitter Sandman is like, I have no patience for them. To live here by choice is an action of a madman, which I thought was quite good. Again, would be nice if we had a bit more to it than just like, here is a safety outpost that you can go to. It would be nice to have a bit more like, what is it? What any interesting features other than it's very populated?
And they just mentioned that the other Doomguard had a sub-faction that had a particular thing about them, which was the one in Ash was like they think it's going too quickly. What's their one? Like, why haven't we got that for them? It seems really strange.
No, nothing.
No.
Yeah. You think when it's the most biggest one, presumably after the faction war, where people might have escaped, and it's more of maybe a refugee place, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it says why, the whole Planewalkers and dust, why you come here. Well, it's not a great place, but you can get lots of dust, like dust of disappearance, dust of sleep, dust of tracelessness, or stuff like that you think could be really fun things to find. But this one is the most interesting thing, is this little tidbit of the Doomguard have found a place in an ancient city in the wasting place, not yet consumed by the forces of plane. Rumors tell of strange flying vehicles with wheels that do not require ground to roll upon. They indicate the inhabitant city, apparently a race of multi-brained fugue entities, may not be entirely gone from this place. Which is that Illithid, or
I was going to say it feels like because it feels like deep space, right? It feels like sci-fi
Spelljammers.
So that's what I wonder if that's what it's trying to refer to. It would have been nice to have a name to it. Yeah, because I instantly am like, oh, we're going to Spelljammer. You're talking about flying vehicles in a realm like that.
Yeah. That's what I think.
I agree. I just wanted to. I realized now what I was trying to put my finger on what it is about this place, and it is a place. It says here in the Planewalkers in Dust section, a place of loneliness, and that's what it is. I think actually now that I think about it, it's that sort of like, just let go. No one cares about you. You're all alone here, all alone. So I think that's what it is. Loneliness is the key theme that I would tie into for this, and it's.
I like that.
It's heartbreaking.
Oh yeah, maybe it just takes you away from your friends first. And splits you up. That's one of the first.
Split up the party. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because I was trying to put my name, because it's not obviously. There's only so much you can say, like, oh, it's like positive mental health, but to extreme. It's not. Yeah. It's like an undercurrent thing, but it's not malicious by intent. It's just awful. And that's it. It's that fear of loneliness and like almost like your own inner critic going like, no one cares about you. No one's going to listen to your podcast. And you're like, shut up. There are, at least.
They totally are. But you're right, because this reminds me, because I made a character that I think for that Morkborg party thing, which I'm going to probably release at some point now again. But I made a character in it called, because I think it kind of reminds me of it, called Scray. And this was Scray's text. Scray sits alone at the party as everyone else dances and has fun. But Scray likes to be alone. They can use the time to think about all the fun they have. It makes Scray so happy, they wish everyone was alone too.
Whoa. Yeah, 100%. Yes,
that's it. And so, and it's special skill he has. Scray can choose one person and send them away to a place of nothingness, an empty room for D3 rounds on a failed DR14 presence check.
Oh my God, Hamilton.
Yeah, it's fucked up. So that's Scray. That's what you're talking about. It's Scray.
Horrible.
And it also, just being around Scray makes your whole body squirm, contort, and discombobulate. Because it's just like, you just feel uncomfortable around them. And then what they do to you is they just send you to a place of nothingness for 3.
You really nailed these creatures, these dust.
Yeah. So that's,
things we created. Ooh.
That's it, exactly. So that's who Scray is. Yes,
and then
makes me happy. I wish you were alone too.
Yeah, everyone should be alone. Ooh.
Like me.
But again, the final thing to say, which actually ties in quite nicely, these spell keys. They take all spell keys here take the form of hollow, whispered lamentations. So it's like, I am alone here. There's nothing for us here. Yeah, so you could easily as a player just find those live, laugh, love, and just change them into something horrible.
Make them so creepy. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love that.
This needs Hamilton Fiona rewrite the inner planes.
Yeah. Just add a little tinge to it. That's because I was going to say right at the end of this is that because obviously I thought Ash was so good, and then
Dust really let you down. Yeah,
I think it did, and it's a shame because like I said, I was like, because they again on the outskirts, again for people like myself looking at it, I was like, they both seem very similar, like Dust and Ash, like similar things, and they're not, they're different. And I was like, Ash seems really good, and then Dust, I was like, whatever. But now we've had this chat and rewritten it, I'm like, that sounds so much more dangerous. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As a result, yeah, the cobwebs that's really fed into everything. That's why I do think like some of these planes, they have way too many hazards and stuff that aren't just like, they don't build upon each other. It's just like, here's the thing, here's the thing, here's the thing. Whereas we could take out those dust devils and those negative pockets and stuff, throw them away, and just have those cobwebs.
Exactly.
That's scary enough.
And just build on it, make them real. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the interesting thing is, I actually read Dust first by accident when I did this.
Interesting.
Because I don't know, I must have like flipped through and opened up the book and thought, oh, the next page is Dust. Maybe because we were looking how many pages it was or something like that. Or I was checking to see what next week's was. So I looked Ash and then went to Dust. So I read Dust and I was like, wait a minute. It's not Salt next, because that's... So I went back and read Ash afterwards. So I was like, oh, I had it the opposite way around. I was like, oh, this is going to be a real boring one. I was like, oh, no, we're in for a treat now.
We're okay.
Yeah, we're in for a treat. So that was good.
Yeah, there we go. Well, we're leaving. Thank God. Oh, just getting all this dust.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah.
Whoa.
I'm going to get one of those lint rollers on me.
Oh God, could you imagine? It's just like, and then all that positive stuff just goes away. Like, no.
Yes.
Where are we going for our final stops on
I buried the lead a bit there, didn't I? Because we are going to Salt and Vacuum.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited too. Again, the final two negative quasi-elemental planes.
Yes.
Journey. I know you always have to do these.
I know. It's like so many things. Yeah.
But then we come to the sort of current end of this thing. Again, we've spoken about possibly doing the astral and ethereal planes at some point.
Yes.
But yeah, you talked about like going through this the
Monstrous Compendium, Volume 3.
Volume 3. Because as we've discovered, obviously there's all these creatures and stuff, which again you go and find out, they actually look really cool. So maybe we'll go through it and like pick our favorites, because we've done a similar episode in the DM's book club with the the Fiend Folio. Sorry.
Yes, exactly. So I look forward to that. So as ever, there is nothing else left to say, is there?
There is nothing else to say other than you can find around us right now. You can see links to.
Yes.
Don't worry. It's because the dust and ash are taking all your brain cells away. If you look around, there'll be links to obviously the rest of the DM's travel book club, our previous travel book club where we just explore the outer planes. You can also check out our sibling podcast, which is the DM's book club, where we look at all things D&D and discuss what we like about them, what we don't like about them, and how we can make improvements for any RPG system. And that's all different sort of lore stuff, and we cover a whole range of topics. So come check us out there as well. But I think 100%. That's everything.
Now that is everything we have to say. Apart from, we shall see you.
See you.
On the flip side. Oh, the planes. I hope it's always that bad. Bye.
Bye.